Welcome back to Assertiveness. We are talking a little bit about the wage gap and just getting an understanding of where does it actually stem from? What actually happened before, prior, and I'm going to say prior to my time because I feel like I'm young, but like it's been a couple of years. And not even what happened before. What actually is fueling this thing? What's at the bottom? What's the foundation? And I mean, we talked a little bit before the ad break about gender roles and finding ourselves in a situation where we're being told about statistics, we're being told about traditionally this is how things. At what point do we stop and say, okay, your traditions are great, but your traditions suck? Okay, so you cannot tell me. And I mean, I hear what you are saying, Amkhelang, because people will say to me, "You've got a great voice for radio." But based on what is my voice that great? Is it because it sounds more like a man's voice and that automatically makes it great? And do people, who do they go out and test whose voice do you want to hear on radio? Because surely being on radio should not be really about voice. Yes, you don't want to be boring. And I've heard some boring men on radio who talk so slow. But is it because they've got a male voice that now qualifies them to be on radio? And I mean, these are the kind of things that we have to now start questioning and asking these kind of questions. But before we get into all that, are we a problem as women? Are we asking too many questions? And I'm talking about now the millennial woman that is now saying, no, you guys being the radical feminist, that's saying the radical black feminist, that's saying, you know what, we have to start probing these questions because that women were okay with it. There were women who were okay with earning less. They're just like, you know what, this is what it is. We're not going to ask questions. Are the women that are asking questions a problem?
Before I answer that question, I want to speak about what feeds that. So
Yes.
when we spoke about gender roles.
Yes.
So like Amo said, in these companies and industries, there are women there, but we should also look at what these women are expected to do. Okay. So this idea that women are supposed to be softer and bring a motherly touch. Yes. There's this perception that women are supposed to make the environment more softer. Yes. Men will bring out the real change, and women will support because we are we are the change makers. Yes. And then when we do speak out, we are seen as disrespectful because we are not conforming to the perception that we're supposed to be.
Yes. Why are you not staying in the position that we've put you in?
Yes. You're rebelling against a system that considers you weak. So you're supposed to be meek and soft and respectful because that's what society says you are. And when you start rebelling against that and speaking out and saying, but this can't be fair, I'm human as much as you. I'm very much capable of doing what you can do as my manager. Now you're stepping out of their comfort zone. Yeah. Exactly.
Sure, that's very uncomfortable for me because I'm generally that type of person who's just going to be like, we're not going to do this way, And for me, it's never been, and maybe I've been lucky enough to work in, and I haven't worked for long, so maybe that's also another reason. I've been lucky enough to work in spaces where I've never needed to, or maybe in my head, it never occurred to me that this is what type of fight that I'm fighting. It was always about, you guys, we can't do things this way. And then when you get asked, and maybe because I was loud, sometimes when you're loud, people tend to pretend to listen because they don't really listen to you. Because then they go and have their conversations about you later on. But it always felt like, okay, I'm being heard, but nothing is changing, but I'm being heard. And can that really be a thing? Can women be heard, but still nothing changes within a company?
Classic example, the mining sector, and I always bring this up when we talk about wage gap, etc. The mining sector, I'm sure you're aware, women still also get paid slightly less than men, but the danger of being a woman who's a miner is so much more. Yes. I mean, let's talk about the equipment that you handle underground. Let's talk about the rape that you encounter on a daily basis. Let's talk about the type of hours and the type of environment that you're going to be working, the proneness to lung disease, all of those things. And yet you still find in those environments where activist groups have been screaming about this, and everybody's been talking about how much of a danger those are, even to the men. You'll still find in those environments that women are still treated as inferior. Their voices are not heard. Their plight is not addressed or challenged. And no one actually deals with what they have to go through on a day-to-day basis. And they're still expected to bring up happy faces and come to work and be grateful for those jobs. So to me, it's just one of those things where you find that we're not taken seriously in these environments, over and not above not being taken seriously. Our needs are not being addressed and met. As Khao said, that the environment is very it's very masculine. E.g., when you try to raise the issue of maybe, say, for example, having a nursery or a creche in your working environment, oh, these women have started with their things now. They want to bring children to the work environment. Yet they don't understand that you're saying that I'm not working the same amount of hours because of my family responsibility. You're imposing a gender stereotype on me by making me actually be the person to do the most of the child minding. I'm trying to actually bring it to a situation where it's a compromise, and still you don't want to meet me halfway. So these are,
and I mean, it's logical things. When we as women think about them, they're logical things. I mean, Sheryl Sandberg talks about, you know, a parking space. She only realized that there was a need for a pregnancy parking space when she was pregnant, and she used to be an executive in this company, and she realized, man, I must go park on the other side and waddle all the way to the office because I'm pregnant, but because there's no parking space. And that for me is one of those small things that we probably look at and we like, this, there's no other way. And when men see it, men think you're rebelling, you being a problem, you're asking for too much. And that for me is, I mean, you talk about the mining industry, and I'm just thinking, so I used to work for, one of my clients was in the transport industry. Well, they used to build roads. And we talk about, so we did an activation once where we went out and talked to truck drivers to say, what is your safety on the road? And the one thing they pointed out is they wanted the company to get rid of the women who work in that space because these women give them HIV. That's what literally these truck drivers say. They say the women are giving our truck, it was the truck driver owners of the trucking companies, said these women that are working in the same space are giving our men HIV.
So I think...
Were they raped?
I don't know. I don't know if it was rape, if it was consensual sex, but they're giving them HIV.
I think it's important that before we even have these conversations about men and women, we probe the power dynamics that we live in. Because power is central to this conversation, and who has it. Essentially, we live in a man's world, and back to your initial question of, as millennial women, what kind of change do we want to see? What kind of change are we bringing to the table? Because you find out that even if we look out throughout history, it's not that women were quiet or women were ideal and they had no place in society, so to speak. Women have always, held down societies, and many of them, but their work has always been overlooked. Right now, we are tired of being overlooked because we have so much power in the world. We're not ideal in sitting and not doing anything. We deserve to just as be shined upon just as men are. So essentially, it's all about power dynamics and who holds that stake, who has that ladder up. And at the moment, women don't. At the moment, marginalized bodies that have been identified with different genders, or they identify themselves besides men and women, non-binary bodies, they don't have that sort of power because the world has, to a large extent, always been seen as black and white, men and women. And now, women are actually saying, this is not what we want. Queer bodies are saying this is not what we want, and this is not what we're all about. So it's important that we see representation. It's important that we add to the conversations or add to the very important plights that we want to put forward and make our society better and representative of all of us. So power is central to this whole conversation, and essentially also the dynamics of colonialism, the dynamics of imperialism. It's rooted in power, it's rooted in colonialism, it's rooted in the white man's world. And those are important conversations that we also need to probe because it's intersectional struggles at the end of the day.
Mandis, you worked in recruitment, and I've always maintained that if you want to take back power, you need to basically become what the other person is, in a way. Okay, let me explain myself. And if we're gonna teach young black girls to not depend on a man, to give them money and validate them through money, we need to teach them the understanding of what money is and create a relationship between money and teach them how to make money, so that literally we diffuse this power that this man has over her because of his money. If we as young millennials are saying, for us to contribute to these conversations, do we have the tools? Are black women, are white women, are Indian women, are women, especially in South Africa, are they educated? Do they have the tools to have these conversations and argue them?
Statistically, at the moment, more women graduate than men. That's a fact. So in terms of having the tools, I think the tools are out there. I just think we need to be given a platform.
Okay.
I think what we're lacking right now is platform. I think we're capable. I think we're competent. I think we have all the resources that should be at our disposal are out there. We just need them to be coming in our direction. So most definitely.
Are we graduating in the core skills?
Look, currently, actually, yes. There's far more women doctors currently graduating than men. Look, there's other fields, for example, that still traditionally are not just black, but male-dominated, e.g. engineering. We're lacking there quite a bit. But currently, for example, there's far more black female chartered accountants than there are black male chartered accountants. So yes, as I said, we have the skills, we've got the capacity, we just need to be given the platform. And also this whole understanding that our hands need to be held. We don't need nobody holding our hands. We just need to be given room to be who we are and thrive. Stop giving us a ceiling. Break the ceiling. See what we're capable of.
But who needs to break that ceiling? Is it us? Is it them?
Society.
So we are basically saying, for us to get where we want to get, we still need these men to contribute and be part of this solution.
We need them to let go of the patriarchy. If they can let go of the patriarchy, it's gonna open everything. So as soon as they let go of the patriarchy, that's all we need.
Patriarchy is rooted in power. How do we say to a man, let go of your power?
Let go of your power.
How do we say that to them? Let go of your power.
I understand what Mandisa is saying, but in my politics, I don't agree with being given space. I agree with taking space in any form or way. I'm considered controversial for saying some of these things, but I'm the type of person who...
Babes, controversy is our life. This is how we live, babes.
I like going back into history to make sense of why the future is the way it is. So with power and with what Amo was saying, I thought about the agents of change in the past. I want to make an example of particularly the ANC, for example, right? So these people were activists, right? Before they became a political party, meant to bring change, right? Definitely. And if you look back to what happened, if you look now, who are the heroes? The men, right? Who are the faces of the ANC? The men. But if you look back and see who really fought, it was the women. So we have always had tools. Men use our successes to celebrate the achievements that have been made as if they did it on their own. They erase us in their movements. Let's look at the rapes that happened during the camps in exile in the ANC. Who talks about them today? If you go read Ridi Tlabi's book on Kwezi, you will read about it. Something that many of us have never heard about because it's silenced. And when they want to speak about that today, nobody wants to speak about it. So I really think that as women who are already in these movements, we need to take up space, even if it means death, because it is a war. We are fighting. We are fighting. It's a different kind of war. And I really think that if Mandisa can take up space by speaking to a man and he understands, that's okay. I'm doing that in my relationship with my boyfriend. We don't have to fight. He gets to sit down and we discuss. If Amo can take up space by doing something really wrong, then she needs to do it. I know it sounds controversial, but we need to take up space because, believe it or not, we are in a war.
But how you talk about being in a war, and I mean, if you look at a few years ago, the war that the ANC was fighting, and don't get me wrong, it felt like a matter of life or death. We wanted our freedom. We were so desperate for this freedom. Are we desperate for women to take up the space and fight these gender issues right now? Do we have enough soldiers? Because that's the other problem, is that you might want to fight, but then you walk into a room of 100 women and they just like, as in snake struggles every day. We're just trying to put food on the table, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I get exactly what you're saying, but to say that we're not at war is very counter the facts.
No, I'm saying we are at war. What I'm saying is the degree of the war and the what's the word? Flight. What's the word? What we are fighting for. Yeah. Is it important to everyone?
You use the words life and death.
Yes.
And currently South Africa is leading when it comes to femicide.
Yeah.
1 in every 3 women is killed by an intimate partner in this country. Let's not even talk about the rapes. We are the rape capital of the world.
Yes.
So in terms of this being a life and death situation, it is definitely a life and death situation. No two ways about it.
See it like that.
I think the problem is that because some of us, it's separated from us, it's not your daughter, it's not your sister, it's not you. We don't see it that way. But those that live the experience every single day, most definitely, this is, we're at war. We're in a real war. And unfortunately, our soldiers are dying. And they don't even know that they are soldiers. We need to actually rally around each other as women and understand that we're at war. And we need to start treating the situation with the urgency that it requires.
And I fully agree with you. Yeah.
I just want to come in there. Also, this idea that, you know, you choose to become an activist is quite problematic, because the situation requires you to actually fight, to actually take up arms, to actually occupy, you know, and protect yourself. It's not true. It's not always by choice. It's actually a matter of life and death. It's actually like, I need to do this for myself. I need to protect myself. And we don't even have to go far and look at the ANC's politics. We can look at Feesman's fall and look at how patriarchy propelled itself and played itself out just in the student movement itself in the past 2 years. And we can actually see what happened there, where black male leaders were taking up space. And going back to your point of saying these are the priorities we want to prioritize at the moment. Like, can we speak about feminism later, or can we speak about, you know, women issues later? Right now, the initial qualm is the fact that we want fees to fall. But no, our struggles are quite intersectional. Our struggles are immediate to us. When as women we are fighting for free education, but at the same time we're battling with issues pertaining to us. We're battling to actually put our agendas forward, and we don't need permission. We don't need to ask, listen, can I have the mic to speak about this and this and that? It shouldn't happen like that, because we're equals.
No, I fully hear you and I fully support you guys. But, you know, the questions will always stand as to, is everybody understanding it this way?
Let me just also give perspective on the problem with South Africa is when we got to 1994 and things shifted. I don't want to lie and say there hasn't been change. There's been
a great change, yes.
And there's been a lot of people who've done a lot for us, and we need to be grateful for that. But the problem with South Africa is we are very liberal in a sense that we've made this success, and because of capitalism, we think that we are this developing country, but we've left so many people behind.
Yes.
So many people. If I can sit here and say to you, Nicolette, I am far. I am allowed to be in a company. I have medical aid, and I'm a black woman. I have this, but the majority of women in some rural place in Umtata come back and say to me, what do you mean South Africa's come far? Where am I? So the problem with South Africa is we've left so many people behind, and those people are going to revolt, and those women are going to revolt. And we mustn't assume that women have never revolted. It's always been the thing, and they're going to come. So the problem with capitalism is it just makes change for a few, and then we think, because the statistics show the success of the few. And you know,
this can only reach the few, so it measures the few.
Exactly, and then we argue, but we're getting there. We borrow solutions from European countries. That's the problem. We don't use solutions that work for our specific situations, because it's unique. It's not the same. It's different. And we need solutions.
Outcomes-based education.
You see
what was that? Education that had absolutely no African narrative.
Exactly my point. And for me, I feel like we've left so many people behind, and we argue that we've made so much success. We haven't. So many people are left behind.
Because let me tell you, I get upset when I see on Twitter, and yeah, granted, we are all clear on the fact that Twitter is not a representation of the whole of South Africa, but the reality is that on a small platform as Twitter, you start to see it when we fight against racism. Everybody rallies behind it. Yeah. We're all fighting, men and women. Then you fight rape culture, and all of a sudden you've got half of the people saying
Classic example, Ntiki Mazwai, just last week.
She comes out with the whole BRICS thingy, and you've got people saying, but why manje?
But let's talk about Penny Sparrow.
Yes, and everybody rallies behind. And that's my problem with this country is I'm asking myself, Uti, do we have enough soldiers to go out and fight this thing? And as you said, take up the position of being an activist without it saying, okay, I'm not an activist. I don't really feel like it because this issue is not about me. You know, do we have enough? Do we have enough people who are willing to rally behind it? Do we have enough people understanding why we must do it? Or do we still need to go out? Because I find myself in a situation where I do a lot of financial literacy and financial education, and you go there and you talk in a room, people get wild up, oh, I'm going to change my finances. Tomorrow they just go back to being the same person who just spends. And I'm just like, and I get the feeling that it might happen also in these, conversations that you guys have as radical black feminists, and you get people all riled up and they're excited and they want to do this, and then tomorrow they've got this stress and the boyfriend is a cheater and this is happening. But we're gonna go for a quick ad break because we're not. We understand what our fight is. We have a clear understanding of what it is that we need to do. But I think right now, going into the next segment, let's talk a little bit about solutions, because it's also easy to just sit and talk about the problem and make the problem, not even make it bigger than what it is, but really amplify it to a point where we start being blind to the possible solutions, and sometimes they don't need even to be that scientific. Sometimes it really just begins with us. Remember that you can join our conversation using the hashtag assertiveness. Please don't go anywhere.